It's time for Monster Tales.
No, not that kind of tale.
Welcome. We have decided to start a new series, and the idea behind it is to capture stories from different people, from different areas of the industry, and get them on tape, because lots of these things we've heard that people will never hear. And so we're gonna, when people come into town and stuff, we're gonna get interviews with them and things and put these out. We'll try to keep them short, but there's just some of these stories that need to be told. And so I'm gonna start today with the most asked question I have ever had in my entire career. Okay, so what is that question? The question is, how did you get in this business? Now, I don't know how many times I've answered this question, but it's a lot. And so maybe this will be the last time I have to answer it. And I'm gonna do the long version, so it's all covered. But I think there's things about this question that may help guide people down the road. So here it is. I grew up loving monsters and was a monster kid growing up in the country in Long Grove, Illinois. And you know, all I had was the TV, pretty much. And so I went along and I loved Planet of the Apes, and Outer Limits was very inspiring and so forth. Well, one day in third grade, a kid brings in a famous monster magazine, and famous monsters, and on the cover was Ray Harryhausen's 20 Million Light Years to Earth. And it was an incredibly beautiful cover. On the back was Don Post's Universal Studios Mass. Now, the back probably affected me more than the front. What was inside didn't matter. In fact, a lot of those old stories, black and white pictures and stuff, I wasn't so interested in that. But I can tell you that I know that was the point in time that changed me. Now, fast forward to high school. I'm still making monsters. I'm doing little appliances and half masts and whatever I could. And I had gotten help from my dentist, who was a wonderful guy, Joe Scheibel. He just happened to live right next door. And so I asked him if I could buy some dental alginate to make a cast of my face. And he was like, I'll do you better than that. You come in on a Saturday and I'll cast your face and brace it, and then we'll pour a plaster positive with dental stone. Well, that was great, because now the appliances fit my face really well. So one night, this was later, who knows how long, I'm probably at this point a senior in high school. Joe Scheibel calls me up and says, hey, my brother's over here. He'd like to see some of your stuff. And so I'm like, cool. So I gathered some things I'd made and so forth, brought him over. And he looks at them, and turns out he's the head of the art department at the local college. And he offered me a scholarship to make monsters, and on the spot. And I thought about it and I said, well, I just don't see how I could make a living making monsters. Seriously. Now, we all know high school kids can be a little thick-headed. That was extra dumb. And so I did go to college. I took theater, never did anything with that. I decided what I could be was an art teacher. I loved art and so forth. So I had some of my greatest experiences in school in the art department. So I'm going to UNC now, come up to Greeley, and I'm going to college. And the teachers were very nice. One teacher gave me drawing credit to make Halloween masks and so on. And so on the side, I was painting masks for a local novelty store called the Party Palace in downtown Greeley. And it was cheap. And I was painting with paintbrushes. I knew nothing, you know. And so I'm just acrylic paints, paintbrushes, and it was like masks that were like, I think at the time they were coming out of Japan, and they were it was so terrible. You know, the lips would be painted over here, awful stuff. And they used to sell them in bins. Now this is dating me, but you could go into Walgreens or Kmart or something like this, and they'd be bins, and you just, you know, grab them and awful things. Well, anyway, so I painted some of those and made a few bucks for college and so forth. Well, one day it was Halloween, and they had a costume contest at the local college, and at the college I was going to. So the first prize was a $300 stereo. Now remember, we're back into the late 70s. That's a really nice stereo. In fact, I think the value of money has gone up. It's like 1/10 of what it would buy back in the old days. I'm not saying it was a $3,000 stereo, but it was a nice stereo. Okay, so I wanted that stereo. So I wore a Don Post werewolf mask. He wore with hands and some kind of jumpsuit. Looked very nice. I lost to a guy that was wearing a Frankenstein mask that I painted for the novelty store. Now, in all honesty, that mask was not better than that Don Post mask. The difference was he was a ham. He was out on the floor dancing and stuff. So I think he got voted for because he was a ham, and I was an incredible introvert at the time. Yes, I had to lose that. Anyway, so I thought to myself, I'm going to make a mask and costume that will win these costume contests, so I started on it right away in November, right after Halloween. And so I don't know what it took me. I sculpted it in oil-based clay, and I took it into the Party Palace. Jim Faust and Jim and Helen Faust ran the place, and just to show it to him, like, hey, I made this. And he looked at it and he goes, could you make more of these to sell at the store? Now that's another moment in time that changed the direction of my life forever. And I go, yeah, I guess. You know, it's like, it was so, the idea of starting a mask company and what it would take and employees and machines, I had no idea. But when it was simplified down to that, could you make more for the store? It's like, yeah. Well, I did, and they started selling, and selling very well. And Morris Costumes came along within the first year. I think it was probably toward the end of the first year. I started putting ads in Fangoria, little teeny ads, but they were selling, and Jim Lawrence saw them, and he recommended the mass to Phil Morris. Well, boom, that took the company off very fast, and so I started making a lot of masks, and I started moving regularly and so forth. And so I guess perhaps if there's a moral to the story, never say never. Don't think you can't do it just because right now, today, you don't know how you're going to pull it off. It's amazing what perseverance would do. In fact, I don't know how they stop you without killing you. If you just, I'm not giving up. If I have to do this, I'll do this. And believe me, we did many things, and many things happened over the years. I will say that I have had a wonderful life with monsters and enjoyed it thoroughly. But I will also say that we've had to reinvent the company. I've had to learn a million things. It was difficult and wonderful. It was, what's the old quote? It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And so that's how I got into the mask business. Not very sophisticated, but it worked, and it was almost like fate was chasing me down. It's like, oh, you idiot, and it just had to tackle me and knock me down to get me to do what I was supposed to do. Seems like it. Okay, I'm going to tell one little side note. We're going to fast forward now to maybe a year ago. We had Robert Short, who is an Academy Award winner for Beetlejuice, and he has been out in Hollywood, done a million things. We've even sold him alligators and stuff. He's had an amazing career. Well, Bob started his career by going to work for Don Post Studios. And there was a point in time where they lost the Universal license, and Don Post was just, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know if his business was over, because that was the vast majority of all their business. Variations, different price ranges of those classic monsters. And Bob goes, well, Bob and Bill Malone, now they were both recent hires, and Bill Malone has his own incredible Hollywood journey. They just go, well, why don't we sculpt our own masks? And Don's like, with no other options, like, sounds good. Now this is as the story's been relayed to me by Bob. So fast forward to this year ago meeting with Bob. He's out here sculpting for us and so forth. And we're having lunch or dinner at the Rio, downtown Greeley, not far from where the Party Palace was, maybe 3 doors down. And he's talking about this situation with Don and the mask and so forth back then. And I asked him, well, what mask did you sculpt? And he's going along and he's saying, and then he says, well, I sculpted this werewolf, and I'm like, werewolf? What did it look like? He described it. We came to realize that the mask I wore and lost at the costume contest was sculpted by Bob. And here he is sitting across the table from me. This is that, there's these pivotal moments in anybody's career. That was one of them, losing the contest and starting to sculpt my first full head mask. And so I was just like, I can't believe it. How does life work out like that? How do these things happen? I don't know. But here's the guy that sculpted the mask that in a way helped start the company. Okay, so that's my story on how I got into the business. And believe me, there are many stories. And we'll have our crew out here, we'll have guest speakers and so forth. I hope you enjoy it, and if you want to see more of these, let us know. We're planning on making them as much as we can, and we will continue from there. Thanks for watching.